learn. And so we're trying to obviously mitigate against that. And it's all aligned in our policy briefs that you are all also well aware of. This M20 conference that happens on the sidelines of the G20 Summit, that program, Aging Closer, come November. And it's independently organized by Media Monitoring Africa and SANEF. So let's give them a warm round of applause and thank them for their time. The M20 initiative, it explores, it develops, it entails policy briefs. There's been webinars and events. There's also been G20 lobbying. Currently, the M20 Summit, that's obviously also happening. And just M20 advisory group, right? Doing the work. Lots of work's been done consistently. And it's to amplify the voices of G20 economies of Africa, of, just also media stakeholders at large, to look at the unique challenges that they're facing, but also look at accountable proposals that need to be developed that are in line with G20 priorities and themes of solidarity, equality, and sustainability at large. It continues from the momentum that happened in Brazil, the M20 in Brazil, and of course, as the USA also takes over after us. And so we do need, we need to help when it comes to the global discourse that's happening on that front. At this point, I also just want to ask that we also observe a moment of silence. So I'm going to ask us all to please stand. We obviously know the realities on the ground. We've had colleagues and people we've known who've lost their lives in the line of duty. We're seeing how the cost of reporting the truth has been a life or death matter in places like Palestine, Burundi, Liberia, Cameroon. And so we just want to obviously honor their service and their work. Perhaps also just pay homage to our colleagues that have passed, even if we felt it was in an untimely manner. Tsidi Madia, we also had Asiri Ndlovu, who was murdered, and his family still awaits justice. So let's observe that moment of silence for them. Thank you. You may be seated. So enshrined in our own constitution is the freedom and the rights of freedom of expression for media and, of course, for press and also other media as well. And this is a right that needs to be afforded by all and to all as well. This is why the summit matters. This is why it cannot happen in isolation. So we just also want to thank some of our core sponsors, including Brand, SA, Standard Bank. They really have come on to support, and of course also some of the other partners and knowledge supporters that are displayed on the screens all around you. The South African public broadcasters also here. They are providing platform and coverage on TV, on radio, online, so the conversations continue. There's also a live streaming app that's on SABC Plus app, and you're welcome to obviously connect and connect to the social media. That is a buzz, given the important work that has to happen. Just before we begin, I need to highlight some house rules. This is from the venue themselves. Bathroom facilities located on the mezzanine level, so this is one level up from the ramp. There is a smoking lounge. It's located also on the mezzanine level for those who need to use it. In the event of emergency, please remain seated. I don't know if I buy that, but just the messenger. The venue team will initiate emergency plans. Okay, that's good to hear. And there are also medics on standby. They will also be able to assist if anyone is having an emergency. The two emergency exits are located on either side of the mezzanine level. And once you have exited the building, you need to make your way to the main gates of Melrose Arch and Corlett Drive. Hopefully we can all remember that as we continue. And Wi-Fi, you can also see there, you can connect to the venue. The password is @VenuePass. It's capital V and capital P as well. And there's also a QR code that you can access there. All right, so on that note, stakeholders, policymakers, business, tech platforms, and all those in attendance today, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. Thank you for contributing. We are about to kick-start things. I'm going to officially welcome Sbu Ngalwa as the Treasurer General of SANEF, as well as the acting SG of the African Editors Forum. Sbu is officially going to be opening this summit for us, and then he's going to be handing over to our Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Minister Sali Malatsi. Let's give Sbu a warm welcome.
Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On this beautiful spring day in Johannesburg, I thought that today I would see some bright colors. I suspect that perhaps we may still be trying to defrost from the cold winter season that we had. Colleagues, I promise you, I don't usually dress like this. No journalist dresses like this. But when I came here last night for the dinner, I realized that the level of preparation was at a much higher level, so I'm just trying to keep up with that. With that, let me welcome all of you and thank you for being here. And it's a pleasure to welcome you to Johannesburg. And I think that as I stand here at this third M20 Summit, I'm proud to announce that this is the first in-person M20 Summit. And I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that that's a reason for us to give ourselves a round of applause for being able to achieve this. And we do have a representation of, fair representation actually, of colleagues from various parts of the world, including our very continent, Africa. We've got delegates from all the 5 regions of Africa. We do have colleagues from also the Global South, India, Brazil, Indonesia. And I must also say that the Global North is also represented here, as we do have delegates from about a dozen countries. Colleagues, Liesel has already mentioned the passing of some of our colleagues, and we've already observed a moment of silence. But as the organizers, we felt that perhaps before we start, we wanted just to flight a short video that captures what we have lost over the past year. And also, we do know that we have lost an unprecedented number of journalists who have been killed by the brutal regime of Israel. So, and I believe that that reminds us of the immense risks that our colleagues face daily in their pursuit of the truth. So I will ask that we flight that short video before I continue with my opening address. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. May their souls rest in peace. Now, some people, even those who are following this online and through the various platforms, may be wondering, what is this M20 about? But before I get there, I think I must make a special mention and thank our public broadcaster for the support that they've given us. I don't think in any event that we've done previously we've had this level of support. I think it's unprecedented. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please give them a round of applause? So, for the benefit, I know all of you know, but for the benefit of those out there who may be wondering, what is this M20? To answer that question, I just have to go back a little bit and also reflect on the state of journalism globally. As Lizel mentioned, this is a parallel program. It's not part of the formal program of the G20, but it's also not a new concept. It's a concept that originated from a desire to bring media issues to the forefront of the global agenda, specifically within the G20 framework. And this M20 is a broad alliance that has come together to promote journalism as a public good. I'm happy to see Siddharth here because we know that in 2023, media organizations in India began conversations around the M20 to coincide with India's G20 presidency. Following this, the baton was passed to Brazil in 2024, and now it is with us in South Africa. And here we are, hoping to pass it on to our American colleagues, Trump willing, might I add. While this is an in-person summit, ladies and gentlemen, we are building on the work and the momentum of our predecessors to ensure a collective, sustained voice for media issues within the G20 process. I'm sure, colleagues, that we all agree that the media landscape today is more complex than ever. Globally and across G20 countries and African nations, we're grappling with issues of disinformation, shrinking newsrooms, and the economic viability of our industry. We also face a significant crisis, which is the erosion of public trust, while the safety of journalists is increasingly being threatened by physical and digital attacks. In Africa, these challenges are compounded by governments that restrict media freedom, often through legislation and internet shutdowns, as we saw recently. So this summit, therefore, aims to tackle some of these critical challenges head-on. And we do have a number of objectives that we want to achieve when we walk out of here. And there are a number of topics that we will touch on. And later on, when I get to the part about the draft declaration, which some of you may have seen, I will elaborate on some of these topics. These are issues relating to information integrity, where we'll ask ourselves the questions as to how do we combat the flood of misinformation and disinformation that threatens to erode public trust. The issue of media sustainability is important for us because we have to answer the question as to how do we build sustainable business models that allows journalism to thrive in the digital era. Of course, the safety of journalists, as we saw with that video, is an important one for us. And we have to try to find a way, though we may not have the solutions, to see what steps we can take to protect our colleagues who are increasingly targeted for doing their work. And of course, colleagues, who are here in the present, but we care about the future of our industry. That is why we need to ask ourselves and somewhat come up with solutions as to how we can innovate and adapt to remain relevant and essential to a functioning democratic society. Now, this event was made possible through the efforts of various groups. And those are groups that are internal groups within SANEF and Media Monitoring Africa. We did have also the Substance Committee. Those were the colleagues that put together the policy briefs that we put out, that some of you participated in. We'd like to thank them for the work that they did. We also had our organizing team, which made sure that today is possible. And it is through their dedication and hard work, ladies and gentlemen, that this event is possible. Please let us give them a round of applause. I also want to thank our numerous partners. I'm sure you've seen the banners there. I'm hoping that there are various banners can come up behind us so that you can see who they are. And I want to say to them that your support has been invaluable. And also we are grateful, colleagues, to our local and international advisory group, some of whose members are sitting in front of me, for the immeasurable and important work that they have done. And for those of you who want to see some of the work that has gone into the preparation for this summit, you can please visit a website that we put together, which is media20.org. Now, let's talk about the road ahead and what we are trying to do here. Colleagues, we will spend the next 2 days here, and our goal for this summit is to produce a declaration at the end that will focus on the crucial role of media in G20 nations going forward. And this declaration, for which we'll still seek some endorsements, will be the powerful document that we hope will influence G20 leaders to highlight information integrity and the role of the media in their formal processes and documents. Now, we are not starting that process from scratch, ladies and gentlemen. The work has already been done. Some of the partners have already made their contributions. So there is a draft declaration that has been prepared. But what we will then do is that if there are any inputs that are compelling, we can always add to that or amend to that, or you can find Janet. Janet is over there, next to Tandy. There's Janet. Janet, please wave. That's it. Janet will help you through that process, but we are not about to start the process. It's already ongoing. We have already formulated this draft based on the very policy briefs that I spoke about, to which our partners have had an opportunity to add or subtract. There is a QR code which will be shared, if it's not here now, where you can download the draft. There it is, the draft declaration. I think let's leave it there just for a short while so that those who want to scan it can scan it and then go through the draft declaration. But be that as it may, the thrust of that declaration, colleagues, deals with the very issues and objectives that I spoke about earlier, which is the issue of information integrity, where we are highlighting the global crisis in the integrity of information, which is intensified by disinformation, fake news, and outputs from AI. Obviously, media sustainability is a key issue for us, and it is here that we address the dramatic shrinkage of the media landscape, arguing for sustainable business models and policy responses to market failures caused by platform monopolies and unfair algorithmic distribution. In the draft declaration, we deal again with the issue of the safety of journalists, where we express our deep concern over the rise in physical and online violence against journalists, and we call for an end to legal harassment and the protection of journalists in conflict zones. We are in the age of AI, we embrace AI, but we are wary as well. So this draft declaration, colleagues, calls for clear copyright and fair compensation rules for journalistic content used by AI. It also advocates for AI frameworks grounded in human rights and for greater scrutiny of who controls and deploys these systems. And the issue of children and marginalized groups is also captured, where we emphasize the need to protect children and young people from exploitation on digital platforms and to ensure that they have reliable information. And we also advocate for equitable media policy and practice for marginalized communities. So when we are done with this session, and we do have our guest of honor, we will share this declaration with you, Minister of Communication and Digital Technologies, Mr. Solimalatsi. But we would like for you to introduce these issues within the mainstream G20 process. I know that a couple of years ago, there was a Send Me Tumamina campaign in government. I don't know if after the last election we have Tumamina. But I believe that since you are a public representative, you will be able to convey some of these messages. And the reason we're doing that, colleagues, is to ensure that our voices are heard at the highest levels of global governance. And our call is to the G20 leaders to integrate information integrity, press freedom, and media sustainability into their broader agendas. And as SANEF and MMA, we would also like to take this opportunity to applaud you, Minister, for your strong and visible drive to expand internet access, to lower the cost of data, and making mobile devices more affordable. Also, your approach to developing fit-for-purpose legislation for the digital age is also highly commendable. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to go through the CV of the minister. I will just ask you to join me now in introducing our keynote speaker for today, which is South Africa's Minister for Communications and Digital Technologies, Mr. Solimalatsi. Please give him a warm round of applause. Thank you very much.
Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to this gathering. And thanks to Sbu, who we crossed paths many years ago. He had a much more standing out hairstyle back then than he does now. But I think you've also just dispelled the notion that journalists and people in media can rock a suit, because you have rocked it very well. It's truly a pleasure for me to be here, and I think it is quite appropriate that even before we get into the address, to just send to all of you, the media colleagues in the space, given the number of lives that have been lost by journalists who are on the front line covering some of the most dangerous stories, but also for the South African media space, who have lost a colossal figure in our space, that being Sidi Madia, who was truly one of the finest journalists that our country had, and had an insightful insights into political analysis and political coverage. Colleagues, in 1976, a single photograph in South Africa changed the course of our history. That image of a fatally wounded Hector Peterson during the Soweto uprising that was shot by the late Sam Nkosi became a global symbol of the brutality of the apartheid regime. It was with that image that the world could no longer ignore the horrors of apartheid. International opinion hardened almost overnight against the regime, galvanizing sanctions and emboldening our own freedom movement. That moment from our past stands as a powerful testimony that truthful information can help topple injustices and uphold human dignity. So today, as we gather here at M20, the lessons continue. that information integrity, as Boo said, matters for all of us. It is the invisible infrastructure of our democracy, the livelihood of successful economies, and the glue that strengthens social cohesion. And we dare not ignore this. Democracy rests on the power of the truth to prevail at all times. Citizens can only make sound decisions and hold leaders accountable when they are informed by facts and not falsehoods. Free and fair elections in particular depend on an electorate that is empowered to independently form opinions free from the abuse of propaganda. And when disinformation pollutes the public discourse, it undermines voters' ability to choose based on accurate information, posing a direct threat to the legitimacy of the democratic processes. And we have already witnessed across the world, and partly even in our country, that this risk continues. During the 2024 elections here in South Africa, we witnessed the rise of generative AI manipulation to produce deepfake videos. These incidents remind us that the speed and reach of digital falsehoods can fracture the social cohesion and political stability. And yet there is cause for confidence, because it is robust institutions and a truly independent media that can shield our democracy from the virus of disinformation. A recent study of South Africa's 2024 elections found that despite fears, AI-driven fake content only had a limited impact, with most information still coming from traditional sources. But we cannot be complacent, and as was highlighted by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, that threats to information integrity are proliferating and expanding with unprecedented speed, more so on digital platforms supercharged by AI technologies. This places science, facts, public health, and human rights under attack. And if lies spread faster than the truth, if hate speech and rumor outrun verified news, the results can be catastrophic for democracies and even for social cohesion and for many of our nations' development. The truth is, even the economy relies on the accuracy of facts. Markets function on trust and transparency. Fraudulent information can disrupt financial systems and erode investor confidence. Free, independent journalism is essential for the economy to function transparently, supporting anti-corruption efforts, fair markets, and informed policy-making decisions. No major challenge, from public health care to climate change, can be solved without fact-based information media at its core. And we know that truth in information is a public good that underpins all of our other public goods in society. If information integrity is the foundation of democracy and development, then an independent media is its foremost guardian. A free press broadcasting a range of voices and perspectives is not just a luxury, but it's a necessity for thriving democracies. We must emphasize that even at this forum, that media freedom and diversity are essential safeguards of truth, and that we need to shield this with everything we have. From the brave reporters who exposed apartheid's atrocities decades ago to today's investigative journalists who are rooting out corruption, we know that when the media truly operates freely and professionally, accountability and progress flows. Yet around the world, the very same media institutions we rely on to uphold the truth are under severe strain. In too many countries, journalists face censorship, harassment, and even violence. But even where overt repression is absent, news media are struggling to survive, and it is one of the biggest challenges that poses an existential crisis to the future of the sustainability of the media. According to the 2025 World Press Freedom Index, media outlets in 160 out of 180 countries report achieving financial sustainability with difficulty or not at all. The economic model that sustained independent news is collapsing in many places, and this poses a massive problem. because when media outlets cannot sustain themselves, society loses its watchdogs. And for those of us who have been given the responsibility as policymakers, we have a responsibility to work together with all the players in the sector to find solutions to the point that Spoo underscored regarding finding sustainable business models that will shape the future of our media landscape. So we must work together as governments and the private sector to support these sustainable models for independent media. This could include innovative funding mechanisms, fair competition policies, and ensuring that dominant tech platforms do not unfairly siphon away advertising revenues that journalism depends on. Even as we defend the traditional pillars of journalism, we face new challenges to information integrity. The digital revolution that profoundly democratized information creation and distribution with benefits risks on a global scale. On the one hand, more voices are being heard than before. On the other, false content and harmful narratives can spread like wildfire across borders and platforms. The business models of social media and search platforms have often rewarded virality rather than the veracity of news. In practice, this means that sensationalism and misinformation can get boosted while credible journalism struggles to reach the audiences it should be reaching. We must urge greater platform accountability, more transparency about how information is curated, and stronger action against demonstrably false and hateful content. We need to elevate factual information rather than suppress it. Another challenge is the rise of AI-generated content. We are entering an era when a single individual with a device at their fingertips can manufacture realistic fake videos, images, and even audio at the click of a button. Deepfakes can be deployed by malicious actors to mislead citizens and manipulate narratives at an unprecedented scale and reach. The challenge for all of us is to harness the benefits of AI while staunchly guarding against its misuse in the public discourse. We need responsible AI governance and ethical guidelines that ensure that these technologies are not weaponized to undermine the truth. Information integrity is a global issue, and it requires global cooperation. And it is why even under South Africa's presidency of G20, particularly through the Digital Economy Working Group, we have made it a key part of our agenda. And I take the challenge, Chair, that we will take the declaration into the forums of the G20 because it is essential that we elevate that discussion in those major platforms. And we are very intent on working even with international players, including the UN, to reinforce initiatives like the UN Code of Conduct for Information Integrity on digital platforms and UNESCO's programs on media freedom and digital literacy. Above all, we will listen and involve the independent media voices. We are taking a multi-stakeholder approach where every player will make a meaningful contribution towards safeguarding the future of this industry, which is so essential to the success not only of democracies but of thriving societies. In doing so, we will tread carefully to protect freedom of expression. Information integrity cannot be an excuse for censorship. It must be about empowerment and empowering citizens to receive accurate information and diverse views, empowering journalists to do their work safely, and empowering technologies to elevate truth over falsehoods. Colleagues, today we also affirm that independent media is the beating heart of our societies, and it is important that we treat information, invest in it, protect in it, and make sure that it ultimately benefits every player in society. So as we embark into the discussions over the next 2 days, I wish you all of the best and hope that the declaration will truly play an instrumental role in safeguarding the future of this industry. We do need an independent, free media for the world to prosper. Thank you very much.
Minister Malatsi, thank you for reminding us that trust in information and trust in truth, it's the oxygen of our democracy. And thank you also for reminding us that integrity is a responsibility and for that commitment as well. Spoo, thank you for officially kickstarting the event as well. I'm looking forward to the insights, looking forward to the invaluable contributions that will be coming as we continue. As I mentioned earlier on, the conversation continues. Hashtag M20, that's how you can follow the sentiments on social media. And then as also was said, and I'll reiterate, SABC is live streaming on the SABC app, SABC Plus. If you do need an account, you simply just log in. It's an email address. It's simple and quick. And then also on our TV and radio platforms as well. That's how you can access the feeds there. So on that note, we are going to get into the first discussion of the morning. Our first panelists are ready and waiting. I'm going to perhaps welcome Siddharth Varadarajan. He's from The Wire. He's representing India. We've got Paula Miraglia, who is Momentum Journalism and Tech Task Force representing Brazil. And Isaac Mina from SANEF, who is representing South Africa. Of course, that will all be moderated by William Bird. So as they make their way, let's give them a resounding round of applause. And let's take a look at this brand essay video as well, one of the co-sponsors. Yeah. All right. So, yes, I believe that chairs are going to be added to the stage at this point as well. And obviously taking place for this first part of the discussion, it's William moderating the session that looks at M20 origins, the agenda. It was succinctly outlined by Spoo in the opening address, but of course we're going to be delving in a little bit further, especially with the global South countries represented here. So as they make their way, of course, we're also just looking at some of the other items on the agenda. As we mentioned, there is that declaration. It has been developed. Janet Hurd has been heading that. She's sitting there at that table. And so throughout the day, we are going to be showing you QR codes. And you're welcome to scan it. You're welcome to take a look. And if it's something that you feel should be endorsed, please add your name to that. If you feel there's any other comments that need to be added, you're welcome to make your way to that desk. Janet and the team is standing by and looking at ways to refine all of that. And there's also plenty more action when it comes to a documentary screening that's going to be taking place a little later on in the program as well. Seats are limited, so when that QR code does come up, I'm going to ask you to it's fingers fast basically. So the first 40 will be allowed to also participate in that. So it looks like, the team is ready and waiting. William, you're welcome to make your way to the stage alongside your panelists as well. And we'll kickstart things off. Thank you. Let's give them another round of applause. All right, Spoo's just also informed me that the minister is going to be doing an interview on SABC. So on that note, we'd also like to thank him as the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies for joining us and for providing that keynote address. Also just reaffirming his commitment to ensuring that truth to power is upheld. And of course, the conversations are reaching the right ears, particularly as South Africa edges closer to that G20 summit that's taking place. But just also the reaffirming of all the programs that have been happening in the build-up towards the G20 from M20 initiatives and beyond. William Bird is on stage. He's welcoming. Yes? Good morning. Good morning. This is William Bird from Media Monitoring Africa. He'll be moderating the session. Siddharth, welcome. Monitoring, we're moderating. Paula, welcome as well. Thank you. Last but not least, I see Isaac is also going to be making his way to the stage.
Yep, Isaac will be joining us. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us this lovely day. A bit hard to see what a lovely day it is, seeing as there are no windows, but I assure you outside the sun is still shining and it is still bright. So this kickoff session we're using just to get an understanding of where we've come from and then looking to where we're going. And the man who's telling us about where we're going is just currently being mic'd up. So I wanted to start with this reference of history is who we are and why we are the way we are. So I'm going to start off because we've got the panel here. We've got represented by nation. We've got India, who's kicked off one of the core elements around the M20, the Media 20. And then we've got Paula from Brazil talking about what Brazil has been able to achieve. And then missing in the middle is Isaac Minard, who's going to tell us about where the M20 is going. So I think it was interesting, just as we were standing behind getting mic'd up, Siddharth was telling me that he's currently, they've just laid 2 charges of sedition against him. So we're sitting with another one of these dodgy journalists. And he's dodgy not because he actually is dodgy, but he's dodgy because he's been doing his job. There's Isaac Minard. I think everyone in the room knows Isaac Minard, so that's okay. And so, Siddharth, I wanted to then just start, if you can give us a little bit of a sense of quite why you've been charged with this issue of sedition and how that links to some of the issues as to why India decided to kick off this idea of a Media 20 in relation to the G20.
Thanks a lot, William. India is one of those countries that takes great pride, and rightly so, for having sustained its sort of constitutional republic, democracy, ever since we became independent in 1947. And what is often not realized by people around the world, although in India now this is increasingly part of reality, is that press freedom is under attack. Journalists are under attack. What happened to me was just a recent illustration of a sort of ongoing use of law, criminal law, defamation of course, but increasingly the use of criminal law to silence journalists, to silence reporters, to shut down or to target news platforms. And it was essentially in response to this occupational hazard that's been visible, and we've been viscerally feeling it for the last 5 or 6 years, that in 2023, when India was president of the G20, and there was a lot of sort of PR going on behalf of the government as to how India is the mother of democracy and India is the Vishwa Guru, is going to show the world the way in how to deal with these problems, that we decided that, look, we need to get it put out there that none of the world's problems, and certainly none of India's problems, can be solved if the media is not free, if journalists aren't free to do the work that they are supposed to do. And so this idea came upon us that we should have a conversation, just like the G20 process had spawned parallel civil society conversations. The B20, we saw some of it last night. W20 bringing women's groups together. C20 civil society. I believe maybe in E20 for environmental issues. But of course, nobody was talking about the media. And media didn't figure in this landscape, and perhaps just as well, because if it was left to the governments, then it would kind of have a very different kind of a conversation. So we said, as independent media in India, can we do something to kickstart a global conversation? And so we hit upon this idea of having a one-day event where we invited editors from around the G20, Global South, Global North, in between. And we realized very quickly that the government of India wouldn't give visas for an event of this kind, so it had to be a virtual event. And so that was the idea, that the media faces common challenges. Threats to press freedom is just one of them. But there are lots of other issues which Sue and the minister flagged in their opening remarks today, and which are very much part of the M20 agenda, as our South African colleagues have planned it for today and tomorrow. Issues of fake news and information integrity, AI, and so on and so forth. Business models, the threat to financial viability of media. These were things that the media across the world was confronting. We were not unique in that respect, but we felt that by having a common conversation, by flagging issues of common concern, not only would we be able to learn from each other's experiences, but I think it will also send a powerful signal to governments such as India's or such as other countries that are turning increasingly hostile towards the media, that you are going to face opposition not just from reporters and media platforms in your own country, but that this is an issue that the media is going to show solidarity on across the world. And so that was the spirit with which we thought of having M20 back in 23. And I'm just totally blown away and astonished and humbled by what our South African colleagues have managed to do with this process, because they have taken an idea that really was quite inchoate and unformed and turned it into something that is, has every chance of becoming a continuous process, something that will be a vibrant platform for media around the world to use to deal with their problems.
Thanks very much. And it is that this is the culmination of a series of processes, actually. There have been several webinars, there have been several workshops and events. They're the policy briefs. For those of you who haven't seen them, get onto the media20.org site. You can see the policy briefs. If some of us are sounding a little too boring, by all means, go and read them while you are sitting here. Although not this session, obviously, because this is far too interesting. But otherwise, you might choose to go and read them. And then the other thing that we are going to be encouraging you strongly to endorse is going to be the declaration. We heard the minister delightfully saying that he will, and he's agreed. It's live on television now, that we know that he will be taking this forward to the ministers' meeting. So this theme of weaponization of the law is really something that's quite common. I think most of us in our nations experience this, certainly many on the continent. And Brazil, however, has used the law in a lot of really different and exciting ways. And they've certainly been one of the countries leading the battle around developing and introducing new laws, new ideas, new policies. So Paula, perhaps you can give us a sense of what Brazil has been doing and where you think the G20 should be going.
Good morning, and thank you for the South African colleagues for inviting me to speak here. And I'm glad to be here with Siddharth also, who had the vision of creating this forum. So I speak here as someone who has, as an entrepreneur who has launched two digital media outlets in Brazil that were only possible to be created because of the existence of the tech platforms, particularly in a very concentrated media market at Brazil. But also as someone who, as a media entrepreneur, has faced little by little all the challenges imposed by technology and tech platforms, who now are concentrating a lot of power when it comes to media distribution, production, and our business model in general. But I speak here also as someone who is leading a think tank dedicated to the intersection between media and technology, Momentum Journalism and Tech Task Force. And I would like to give you some context about what is going on in Brazil. Brazil has a very strong digital rights community who has been discussing the internet for a very long period. We have created a pioneer legislation, the Marco Civil da Internet, which is a very strong and powerful governance legislation regarding the internet. Disinformation has also played a very important role in our country. From a political perspective, we had elections that have been deeply impacted by disinformation and the weaponization of information circulating in tech platforms. Disinformation played a key role when it comes to public health. Brazil had, during the pandemic, had 700,000 people that were killed, and disinformation played an important role there. And we almost had, we had a coup attempt that where we could say the disinformation and social media platforms also played a key role there. I'm giving you all these elements because I think they inform a lot of what's going on in Brazil now, a lot of the civil society acting organizations, movements, and also the efforts coming from our governments. We have had some attempts to regulate big tech, facing a lot of lobby, a very strong lobby as well. And I think this all created a certain environment to how the topic was addressed while Brazil had the presidency of the G20. The final declaration addressed specifically disinformation, calling for regulation of technology, promoting transparency, accountability, human oversight, and the protection of copyright. This was important. This was the result of a process where information integrity was addressed during that whole year while Brazil had the president of the G20. Brazil, as a result, also established a global initiative together with UNESCO to information integrity on climate change. This was a very concrete outcome of the G20. I think that all that I'm bringing here also contribute to creating grounds for a broader discussion and acting on our Supreme Court and our Congress and civil society. So the Brazilian Supreme Court recently concluded a trial where they voted the constitutionality of Article 19 on our Internet Bill of Rights, the Marco Civil da Internet. And they have changed the regime of liability for third-party content when it comes to social media platforms, making them more accountable, with a strong reaction both from the platforms and from the US, but I'll talk about that in a second. In July 2025, the BRICS Declaration also addressed AI, copyright, saying that we need a balanced approach to protect intellectual property and safeguard the public interest. There must be adequate protection for intellectual property rights, and particularly copyright, against unauthorized use of AI to prevent abuse of data, extraction, and privacy violations, while allowing fair compensation mechanisms. I think all these things are connected. And finally, last week or 10 days ago, Brazil approved a new bill that is that's also regulating big tech to increase the protection of children and adolescents using social media, games, and digital applications, introducing new obligations to digital platforms. This bill doesn't address journalism directly, but opens a road for us to discuss big tech regulation and journalism in similar terms, including fair compensation. To conclude, how can I describe what is going on today? I think the regulation of big tech companies is becoming an increasingly central issue for Brazil. President Lula has repeatedly stated that companies such as Google, Meta, and X must be held accountable for the impact they have on Brazil's information and democratic ecosystem. The Brazilian government is pressing for greater algorithm transparency, defiance against disinformation, and fair taxation of platforms. It brings Brazil closer to international debates on digital regulation, but also puts the country on a collision course with the interests of the platforms themselves and the United States, and particularly Donald Trump, who recently imposed 50% tariffs on Brazilian products. In recent months, the relationship between President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and Donald Trump have been marked by strong diplomatic and economic tensions. The debate over regulation in terms of regulation and the relations with big tech companies is connected to discussions about sovereignty, about the protection of democracy, and the strengthening of public interest journalism. This is a scenario that Brazil shares with other countries in the global south. That's why I think it's so important for us to be discussing this in the G20 context with a specific fora like the M20. I think that cooperation between global south countries has a great opportunity right now. We're talking about global data. We're talking about sharing knowledge about regulation efforts. We're also talking about developing common solutions. When it comes to public infrastructure, when it comes to models of alternative and more fair licensing agreements, we're talking about transfer of knowledge between our countries. But I think that most of all, what we're talking is about acknowledging, realizing, and transforming to power the value of our markets. Together, Brazil, South Africa, and Indonesia markets have a value that is incomparable. And we should use that in our favor. We should use that to defend public interest journalism. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Paula. Yes, that deserves some applause, I think. So I think there are a few things that really strike me about Brazil's response, is that unlike many nations around the world, they're not being wilting wallflowers. They're taking the challenge on in a fairly bold and, in many respects, very progressive manner. Because of their commitments to democracy and democratic values, and I think that now, and hopefully what the M20 Summit is demonstrating, that there's sufficient consensus to promote and push forward in a bold manner on some of the critical issues that we're facing. If we just sit still and don't take on the dark forces are going to take us on and destroy us only too easily. So, moving to Mr. Minnar, I think all of us know Isaac as a person who's been intimately associated with the M20, and so it's entirely appropriate that Isaac is here going to talk to us now about the current objectives of the M20, Isaac, and interactions that you've had with government and important elements that you think we should take note of. Over to you.
Thank you. When SANEF and MMA saw the South African government's presidency's agenda for G20, we couldn't understand why that they did not take on some of the gains made during the Brazilian presidency in getting some language around information integrity and media development, and, for instance, the global initiative on information integrity and climate change. So there were quite a lot of progressive issues for the G20, in any case, to start recognizing the role of media that came from the Brazilian experience, and we didn't see it on the South African agenda. So we wondered, how are we going to get some attention to it? How do we get the G20 under the South African presidency to think about these issues and possibly get it in some of the statements and in the action plans of the South African G20 presidency? So I must say that in the initial months where we tried to interact with government to do this within the G20 framework, that didn't really work, which meant that we decided to go and do it independently as a parallel process, what we're doing now. There are pros and cons to that. The one pro is that we can determine our agenda and we can do what we think should be done. And we identified three things that Sabu already referred to this morning about information integrity, media development, future of journalism, including safety of journalism. So those are the three things that we thought we should focus on. And it was so great then that when we started interacting with some of our international counterparts, that we got the tremendous support from many organizations who offered to help us, because we've never operated in a G20. We didn't really know what to do. People like Paula and Siddharth and others could give us some advice on how to maneuver. But we realized then that the way to do it is to get into the discussion with strong positions. And with the help of all those organizations, we then developed policy briefs, of which 8 has been published and 1 will hopefully be published soon. I won't name her. Those policy briefs span information integrity and climate change, IP, AI and IP, children's rights. So a whole range of issues and quite a number of media viability angles as well. And we managed to get quite a lot of input from around the world in what we have now extracted from those policy briefs, which is a declaration that we hope to issue. So another appeal to have a look at the declaration. We'll put the QR code on again. If you have ideas about certain points that would be strengthened, we would love to invite you to write it up. We'll publish that as well. And we hope to, during the course of the conference, show periodically which organizations have signed up to the declaration. So I should just say, if there's any organization who already looked at it and you want to sign up, please go to Janet Hurd over there. Janet, and she will start adding your name. We will also use another tool for that. But back to the topics. We realize that at this stage of the year, it may be difficult to get some of the issues that we're raising adopted within G20 processes, also because some of the ministerial reports are already done or nearly done. So the next focus is to try and influence the leadership declaration. So we're so glad that the minister promised to take that forward. Last night, B20 promised to take that forward. We're in discussion with a number of other G20 formations to also help us to promote those issues. I should just say that the experience we had to get into the G20 process is not unique. For some years now, while South Africa has really good legislation, we have media freedom, something that's been lacking is a constructive discussion between journalists and editors and the leadership of this country, with very little opportunity to constructively engage on issues that are important to the media. So we also hope that some of the outcomes of this may help to actually get that discussion going, which has been outstanding for years. Thanks.
Thanks, Isaac. Yeah, I think we've got a lovely overview of where things are. We're going to just start to look forward to what we would hope to see emerge from the M20. So Siddharth is one of the birthing partners of the M20 in its original form. What do you think, or what would you like to see emerging from the M20 this year?
Yeah. No, I think that the agenda outlined for today and tomorrow is pretty broad, and I think speaks through the whole range of common challenges that we confront. If I were to just flag 2 or 3 that are of particular concern or interest to me, and which are perhaps more urgent than others, the first is the question of journalist safety and press freedom in general. And I have in mind in particular the slaughter. There's no other word to describe it. The slaughter of journalists in Gaza, most of which has involved deliberate targeting of reporters after these reporters have been branded in one way or the other as targets. And it seems to me that the level of outrage that we ought to see around the world, not just at the official level, government level, or the UN level, but also in terms of media organizations, is just not there. And I think it's important that, I'm glad that we began the deliberations today with that short film prepared by Sanaf, to remind us that there is an urgent pressing issue here, which is that journalists, the only journalists on the ground, are being relentlessly targeted. And it's impossible for journalists from other parts of the world to enter Gaza. So you have a kind of complete information blackout, which serves as a very convenient cover, obviously, for the crimes that are being perpetrated there. So I think that what can we do collectively to raise our voice about this? I know that it'll be next to impossible for the G20 leaders' declaration to say anything too sort of pointed, but I think a push ought to be made that at least at the level of G20, the leaders, this targeting of journalists, has to stop, and there has to be accountability. There is, I think, a designated day, November 5th, for ending impunity for attacks on journalists, and I think that flagging this issue is, frankly for me, priority number one. Second, the question of information integrity is central to this conference, to the work we do, to the place of journalism in society. And the reason we need to tackle this question urgently and come up with a constructive, positive framework is because disinformation, and here's the irony, right? You have disinformation that has been weaponized. Very often, not just, this isn't being done by guys in their basement. You have, malicious political actors that have weaponized disinformation on a colossal scale. We see this in India, we see this in other parts of the world. Yeah. And having weaponized disinformation and using it to drive public discourse in a certain way, creating fakes, creating deep fakes, and so on and so forth, the same set of political actors turns around and says, oh, there is a problem of fake news. We need laws to deal with this. Mm-hmm. So the same guys who weaponize this information to drive a certain political agenda then turn around and say, we need to crack down on fake news. And we need to pass laws, we need to pass regulations, all of which then there's a very good chance would be used against bona fide media, right? So this is a problem that I know in India we confront. There are parts of Europe where this is an issue, so I think that having a conversation on how we square this circle, how do we ensure information integrity, and how do we prevent legitimate concerns over fake news and misinformation, disinformation from being weaponized into legal architecture against the media. That's, I think, a very, very crucial conversation. And third, the broad rubric of, I would say, sort of the financial / business / IP, some of the issues Paula flagged, for example. She's fortunate, Brazil is fortunate in having a government that is trying to find a solution to this, dealing with the power of platforms. In India, we have, in a way, the opposite problem, which is that, in Brazil, the government is confronting the platforms are resisting, and that's leading to tension with the US. In India, the government puts pressure on the platforms to delete content critical of the government. So we have the highest number of Twitter deletions, highest number of YouTube deletions, Facebook deletions, anywhere in the world, or maybe the second highest in any given year, but very, very high numbers. And, the kind of content, occasionally X will let us know that the government wants this tweet deleted, and they will say, we don't agree with this, but we're just flagging it for your information. But very often tweets vanish, very often the whole Twitter account can be withheld. Videos get deleted, vanish from YouTube. And a lot of this is due to pressure being put by, in this case, the government of India, but this happens around the world. So you have platforms that capitulate in a way. and don't fight the fight, even though I would argue that it's very bad for business. But then the whole question of large language models taking on board content that we produce, profiting from it, there's no share. So I think galvanizing conversations at our level and then escalating those to the G20 level is absolutely vital. That some sense of balance in the relationship between platforms and media is restored. I think that we both have to live with each other, we both benefit from each other. I think that a platform like mine, The Wire, which is a small, low investment, non-profit, wouldn't have reached the millions of people that it has reached without the leveling effect that the big platforms provide.
Yeah.
Right? But how do you strike a balance between the reach that media gets and the fact that there isn't an equitable share of the revenue? IP, I think this is a great topic which also needs urgent consideration, and I know that we're going to be talking about it in the next 2 days, but I would really look forward to these sets of issues emerging, and when we pass the baton on to M20 colleagues in the US, that this will this dialogue will continue in a more urgent fashion.
Thank you very much. Paula, having heard those three priority areas, which I think thankfully are well addressed in the summit program and agenda, can you give us a sense of what kind of hazards or risks you think we should be looking to avoid, given the kinds of steps that Brazil has taken, given the realities that Siddharth has just pointed out? What are the things that you think we should be looking to avoid for this year and for 2026?
I believe that there is one, the first one I would say is that it's clear, I think that it's clear now how public and private interests are mixed when it comes to discussing tech platforms. I think it was evident when we saw the inauguration of the new American administration. And I think this is to be reminded all the time when we are discussing public interest journalism and public infrastructure and transparency. I think whose interest is prevailing when we're having these discussions. I think this is something that our governments need to have in mind during a process such as the G20. I also think that there is Brazil has now an AI national strategy with a significant amount of funds dedicated to it. And I don't see journalism as part of this strategy. And I think this is something that we need to reflect on as also media people. I think that our industry, and now I'm speaking for my country, but I think that some of our countries share this context. When it comes to be described as an industry, it's a very small one. And it generates very little revenue in comparison to other industries. So it's not considered from that perspective. I think that we're good at stating our principles, we're good at stating how important journalism is to democracy, but because we're not so relevant from an economic perspective, sometimes we get neglected on some of the key discussions. And I think that we need to be better at stating why journalism is important to the economy in many fronts. I think that without journalists, Brazil won't be able to conclude all the transitions that needs to go through. The energetic transition won't be done if we don't have good information. People who are not well informed don't vaccinate their kids. So we need to, it's a public health issue. So I think it's on our side to be better at showing how journalism is important to a healthy and prosperous economy. I also see a risk when it comes to innovation. I think that we need, and what we are doing is putting a lot of effort in showing how platforms are responsible for the situation that we are facing today as the media sector. But because we're in such a crisis mode, a sustainability crisis mode, we discuss very little about how we want to innovate. And we need to be able to innovate as well. We need to have a vision for our sector, and a vision that includes innovating. And I think this is very hard when you're under such huge financial you're under such huge financial pressure. I think it's hard because technology, we don't have the advantage. I think the knowledge and the capacity to imagine the future, I think we don't have all of that, but we need to be invested in that. And I see a great risk if we talk only about regulation. Regulation is key, don't get me wrong. I think we need to regulate. It won't be enough. We need to regulate. We need to have a vision about the future of our industry. So sometimes these things are presented to us as we needed to choose between one of them. Are we going to talk about regulation or talking about innovation and the future of our industry? I think we should be doing both. That's the only way for me that we'll have a sustainable and strong media ecosystem.
Lovely, thank you very much. So on that point, Isaac is the last speaker for the panel for this particular part of it. Can you tell us, in terms of what you think the role of Africa can and should be in not just in the M20 going forward, but in terms of its relationship to the G20, especially given that this is likely the last time a G20 will be hosted by a global South country for at least a long while?
So with the African Union, the latest member of the G20, we did our best to accommodate or to invite and get our colleagues from around the continent to participate. And I'm glad to say that we have a significant number of organizations from around the continent who is involved, and we're trying to make sure that we elevate the voices of African countries and organization colleagues in this process. One of the big supporters is the African Editors Forum, but if you look at the other screen with all the logos, you'll see how many African organizations are in support of that. So firstly, I think we managed to get quite a number of experts in these fields to start thinking about it and to start helping to shape what's to come. We will also, in upcoming continental conferences and fora, we'll have additional or more sessions to see how we can actually implement the outcomes of this process. We will also make sure that in the M20 going forward beyond this year, we will try and make sure that we have a voice so that when it goes to the global north, that the global south is still on the agenda. I want to add just something else about South Africa, if I may.
Go.
There's a couple of really interesting developments in South Africa that I think gives us lots of opportunity, especially around all the topics that we're talking about. So firstly, establishment of journalism funds. We just recently launched the Digital News Transformation Fund. SANEF is busy working on the Journalism Fund South Africa. Those funds may help to support journalists in a variety of ways. SANEF and MMA, we're also working hard to convince the South African information regulator to bring the very old South African promotion of access to information legislation into the digital age, and to make it easier for journalists, for instance, to use that to get access to information. So there's a whole new field, and that links into some of the efforts by the African Commission on Human People's Rights to also come up with digital policies related to freedom of expression, access to information. And then lastly, I want to say, in the room we have representatives of 10 organizations who, with the help of the UNESCO and the EU, formed a coalition called the Social Media for Peace Coalition. who started to talk to platforms to come to the table, to government to come to the table, to business to come to the table, to see how we can jointly, in a multi-stakeholder way, try and fight online harms in particular. And in that coalition, we have from media organizations, fact-checkers, ethics, digital ethics, freedom of expression organizations. We have the South African Human Rights Commission as one of the coalition members, quite a number of research organizations as well. So I think putting all these things together, there's lots of work to be done, and we will certainly make sure that all those initiatives pick up on the outcome of this conference.
Thank you, Isaac. Yeah, you, excuse me, you are on the continent of innovation, actually, and many of our colleagues are here. So speak to each other. I think we've got a very good sense of how the M20 has originated, some key things to be careful of, some key themes that we need to think about. I think we're going to, are you going to announce that or me? No? Okay, Liesel's going to come back because she's far better at saying these things than I am. But just to let you know, there's a deadline today. So those of you who want to add or make comments on the declaration, you've got until 5 p.m. today to make those comments. It's already been widely distributed for input and comment. We do, and we are, however, looking for endorsements of that declaration. It's really, really cool. It's the sort of thing you'd want to take home and frame on your wall and show your family and let them all be excited about how exciting a declaration really can be. So with that, thank you very much to the three fabulous guests. Back to you, Lisa.
Okay. All right. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our moderator. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us, obviously, why, even though it wasn't endorsed in the G20, independently it is being run. And so the M20 initiative is really focusing on, key issues. And as William mentioned, the policy brief team, they're standing by there. So this is the QR code. Please scan it. If you feel that the inputs are ready, you're welcome to endorse it. And if you feel there are any refinements or additions, then you're also welcome to go to the team and add that. There's a 5 p.m. deadline, as was reiterated there. The panelists obviously taking us through why M20 started, the importance of global South-to-South cooperation as well, and how democracy, dignity, they all go hand in hand. And so that movement continues, the conversations continue. We're going to take a quick break, 30 minutes. Please refresh yourselves, enjoy interacting, drink some coffee. We'll be back in 30 minutes, and we'll delve into session 2. That looks at the future of journalism, and that's from a global development perspective. So we'll see you in about 30 minutes or so. Enjoy.
They're gonna go